Ahoj, já vás zdravím u nového videa. Today we are going to talk about verbs that are related to memory. As you might know, in Czech we have several verbs related to memory. Some of them look a little bit similar and they have very different meanings. So let's take a look at it. Mainly we're going to talk about the verbs zapamatovat si, pamatovat si, vzpomenout si, vybavit si, zapomenout, připomenout a myslet na něco. These 7 verbs. Jdeme na to. Dobrý den, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. First, let's take a look at the verbs that are related to remembering something. Let's start with the verb zapamatovat si. Zapamatovat si. Zapamatovat si is a perfective verb and it means to memorize. When you actively study something or you are making sure that you would remember it, that is zapamatovat si. The si part is very important. Zapamatovat si. It does not exist without si. We also have pamatovat si, which I will mention right after. But logically, I thought I would start with zapamatovat si first because it's something that you do before you are forcing yourself to remember something. Because zapamatovat si is a perfective verb, it cannot describe the present. If you say zapamatuju si to, it means I will memorize it. I will remember it, I will memorize it. Zapamatuju si to. Musím si zapamatovat tohle telefonní číslo. I have to remember this phone number. Musím si zapamatovat tohle telefonní číslo. Or už jsem si zapamatovala všechna jména. I've already memorized all the names. Už jsem si zapamatovala všechna jména. A verb that is somewhat related to zapamatovat si is pamatovat si. Pamatovat si means to remember and it is imperfective. You can see that look very similar. You just have the prefix za, zapamatovat si, pamatovat si. Pamatovat si means that you remember something that you've already memorized it. Now it's in your brain and you know about it. For example, nepamatuju si jeho jméno. I don't remember his name. Nepamatuju si jeho jméno. As this verb is imperfective, it describes a present tense as well. So, nepamatuju si. I don't remember, maybe because I've never even tried memorizing it. Pamatuješ si, kdy má Jana narozeniny? Do you remember when it's Jana's birthday? Pamatuješ si, kdy má Jana narozeniny? And next verb is vzpomenout si na. I'm emphasizing the na preposition because it has to be there. The previous two had si and then it had a direct object in the accusative case. This one goes with the preposition vzpomenout si na, which means to recall, to remember. And here is where it can be a little bit problematic because when you look at pamatovat si, it's translated as to remember. Vzpomenout si is also to remember. So what is the difference? As I said, vzpomenout si also means to recall. It means that you didn't have a certain thing on your mind and then you remembered suddenly. So the verb vzpomenout si is active, something that suddenly appears. You have a piece of information or you had it and then you couldn't remember it for some time and now you suddenly recalled that piece of information. Už jsem si vzpomněla. I remembered now. Už jsem si vzpomněla. Nepamatovala jsem si jeho jméno. Už jsem si vzpomněla. I didn't remember his name. Oh, I just remembered it. So, when you compare pamatovat si is stable. You either know something or you don't know it. Vzpomenout si is dynamic. It happened or it will happen. Vzpomněl jsem si na tebe. I remembered you. I thought of you in a way. Vzpomněl jsem si na tebe. Maybe there was something that reminded me of you, so I can say vzpomněl jsem si na tebe. Remember, vzpomenout is one of those tricky verbs ending in N-O-U-T, so the past tense is a little bit irregular. Vzpomněl, vzpomněl. And remember, vzpomněl jsem si na tebe, na tebe. Well, we don't have to have a preposition if we have a clause. For example, nemůžu si vzpomenout, kam jsem dala klíče. I can't remember where I put my keys. Nemůžu si vzpomenout, kam jsem dala klíče. You could say, nemůžu si vzpomenout na to, kam jsem dala klíče. But it's redundant. We almost never say it. So it's either vzpomenout si na něco, or vzpomenout si kde, kam, jak, etc. Here I would like to mention its imperfective counterpart. Vzpomínat na, or vzpomínat si na. Here we can leave out si in certain meanings. Remember, vzpomenout means to recall something suddenly. Vzpomínat, as it's imperfective, it's a little bit slower process. And there is a little difference between vzpomínat na něco and vzpomínat si na něco. For example, you can say, vzpomínám si na to. Oh, I remember it now. I am now picturing what happened. I remember this event. It's a little bit similar to pamatuju si. Pamatuju si tu situaci. I remember that situation. And we can say vzpomínám si na tu situaci. So there is a very small difference. Pamatuju si tu situaci, it means, yeah, I never forgot it. I've always remembered it. It was a very strange situation. It's on my mind, I remember it. Vzpomínám si is that maybe I was not thinking about this and someone brought it up. They say, hey, do you remember that day when we did this? Oh, yeah, I remember. Vzpomínám si. Vzpomínám si. You would emphasize it just popped in your head. But in certain situations, pamatovat si, vzpomínat si is similar. Now, what happens if we take away si? If you just say vzpomínat na, vzpomínat na něco means that you actively think of something. You actively remember a certain person, a certain activity, a certain situation. Často na vás vzpomínáme. We often think of you. It means we often think of you, the nice times we had. We often mention you in our conversations, etc. So it's more active. It means you sit down and think, oh yeah, I remember my grandparents. Často vzpomínám na babičku a dědečka. And here you don't say si. Because vzpomínat si means that you are recalling something at that moment. Now I would like to mention the verb vybavit si. Vybavit si is a synonym to vzpomenout si. Because they are both perfective. Vybavit si and vzpomenout si. We can use them interchangeably. We could say that vybavit si is slightly more informal. Vybavit si means to recall or to bring or come to someone's mind. Co se ti vybaví, když slyšíš tuhle písničku? What comes to your mind when you hear this song? Co se ti vybaví, když slyšíš tuhle písničku? Let me give you an alternative with vzpomenout si, so you see how different this is. Co se ti vybaví, what comes to your mind, versus na co si vzpomeneš. Na co si vzpomeneš, what do you recall? Co se ti vybaví, what comes to your mind. We also have an imperfective version, vybavovat si. Vybavovat si means to be recalling. In a way, it's also a synonym to pamatovat si. Remember, I showed you a slight difference between pamatuju si and vzpomínám si, both imperfective. We could also say vybavuju si, which would be the synonym, a perfect synonym for vzpomínám si. Nevybavuju si, odkud ho znám. I don't recall where I know him from. Nevybavuju si, odkud ho znám. So we could say, nevybavuju si, odkud ho znám. Nevzpomínám si, odkud ho znám. Nepamatuju si, odkud ho znám. All meaning pretty much the same thing. Now I want to mention the verb myslet na něco, to think of something, or to have on someone's mind. For example, someone tells you, hey, don't forget that we have that event on Tuesday. Jo. Neboj, myslím na to. Don't worry, it's on my mind. I am not going to forget, in other words. Neboj, myslím na to. This is a super practical phrase. Neboj, myslím na to. It's on my mind. You could also use it in a way that you think of something or you didn't think of something. For example, you were finding a solution and then you didn't think of one important factor, so your suggestion doesn't work. And you could say, na to jsem nemyslel. I didn't think of that, or I didn't take this into consideration. Na to jsem nemyslel. Nemyslel jsem na to also means I was not thinking about that. Something was not on your mind. And now it's time to mention some verbs that are related to forgetting. The most important verb, zapomenout. Zapomenout, the same ending as vzpomenout, zapomenout, to forget. This is a perfective verb. It can only describe the future and the past. Zapomněl jsem si doma mobil. I forgot my phone at home. Zapomněl jsem si doma mobil. Si doesn't have to be part of this verb. Here we said it because we meant our own phone. Zapomněl jsem si. You could say zapomněl jsem doma mobil, which would work. Zapomněl jsem doma mobil could sound like it was someone else's phone. Nezapomeň mi zavolat. Don't forget to call me. Nezapomeň mi zavolat. Zapomenout, as I said, is perfective. Zapomínat is an imperfective counterpart. To be forgetting. For example, you could say you often forget something. Vždycky zapomínám jména. I always forget names. Vždycky zapomínám jména. Now, one important difference between zapomenout na něco and zapomenout něco. Zapomenout něco without na means that you forgot something. You forgot to grab something. Zapomněla jsem si doma mobil. I forgot my phone. If you say zapomněla jsem na mobil, I forgot about the fact that I have a phone or that I was supposed to check my phone. So when you say zapomenout na, you forget about an idea, about someone, about a fact. Just like in English, you say forget about something or someone. In Czech, we replace about with na. Zapomenout na. So remember that. To si pamatujte. Remember that. And finally, the verb připomenout, which means to remind. You see something that looks or sounds familiar. You could say, něco mi to připomnělo. It reminded me of something. Něco mi to připomnělo. It reminded me of something. Mi. Připomeň mi, že mám koupit mléko. Remind me to buy milk. Připomeň mi, že mám koupit mléko. So these forms are really useful. Připomeň mi, remind me. Zapomeň or nezapomeň. Forget, don't forget. Vzpomeň si, remember. This is all I wanted to share with you, which was quite a lot. Of course, there could be some other variations, but I wanted to give you the most common ones. If you can think of other examples, share it with others in the comments. I will appreciate it. So just to sum this up quickly, we could think of a learning process. First, you have to memorize something. You want to get it in your brain. That would be zapamatovat si. Zapamatovat si. Then you could say it's on your mind, you're thinking of it. Myslet na to. Myslet na to. You really want to make sure that you're not forgetting it, so you are reminding yourself. Připomenout si to. Or připomínat si to, to keep reminding yourself. And even then, you can forget it. Zapomenout. And then you suddenly recalled it. Vzpomenout si. Or vybavit si. And finally, after all this process, you can say, pamatuju si to, pamatovat si. A ještě vám chci něco připomenout. I want to remind you something. All my video courses that are available on Udemy are 30% off until the end of March. So if there is any video course that you're missing in your collection, now is your chance to buy them. Just use the discount code 30. You'll find all the links on my website, czechbyzuzka.com/video-courses. Thank you so much for sticking until the end. I know it's quite a lot of information. And now it's time to practice it with an exercise. This time we're going to take a look at 6 sentences. Each contains 3 options for verbs, and your task is to choose the best option. Be careful because sometimes you can have 2 options. So choose 1 or 2 options that fit the meaning and also the grammar. Pause the video a teď jdeme na to. Číslo 1. To mi připomnělo, že jsem chtěl zavolat Jirkovi. To mi připomnělo. Very useful sentence. To mi připomnělo, že. It reminded me that. Číslo 2. Here, 2 options are correct. Vzpomínala jsem na tebe, myslela jsem na tebe, když jsi byla u zkoušky. You're sending good wishes to a friend who's taking an exam, so you can say vzpomínala jsem na tebe. I was remembering you and I was thinking of you. Myslela jsem na tebe. Myslela jsem na tebe might be more common. Číslo 3. 2 options are correct again. Už si nepamatuju nebo nevybavuju detaily z té knížky, ale vím, že se mi líbila. Už si nepamatuju a nevybavuju detaily. Číslo 4. Můžeš mi prosím připomenout čas naší schůzky? Připomenout. Připomenout čas naší schůzky. Číslo 5. Když vidím staré fotky, vždycky si vzpomenu na svoje dětství. Vždycky si vzpomenu na svoje dětství. A číslo 6. Promiň, ale úplně jsem zapomněl na tvoji oslavu. Úplně jsem zapomněl na tvoji oslavu. To je ode mě všechno. I hope you did well with this exercise and that you learned quite a bit. I'll see you again next Thursday. Mějte se krásně a ve čtvrtek na viděnou. Ahoj.